Welcome to Mom Boss Central. I'm your host, Alexia Hoffman. This podcast is where entrepreneurial moms like you and me come together for real and raw conversations filled with practical tips, genuine stories, and a whole lot of girl power. But it's not just about listening, it's about building a community. If you haven't already, make sure to join at mombosscentral.com. So whether you're sipping on a cup of coffee, pouring yourself a glass of wine, or tuning in on the go, get ready to join the conversation and become part of our supportive Mom Boss Central community. Shannon, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you on and so excited for this conversation. Will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, I am Shannon Salge, and I am the owner of the Wellness Paradigm, which is a functional health and fitness coaching program for women. And I'm also a mom to an 8-month-old, almost 8-month-old, and I'm just excited to be here.
Yes, exciting. Well, Shannon, tell me about your business. And I know you said your baby's 8 months. So talk to me about when your business got started and what it was like to have a baby. Well,
Boy, I have to say I am very, very grateful. One thing, I'm a planner. I plan almost everything ahead if I can, right? As much as you can plan with kids. But, I really wanted to start my business before having kids. And kudos to so many moms that do it at the same time because it's just it's hard. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But I started my business back in 2020. And I was manager at a gym as a Lifetime Fitness, and the world shut down, and I realized like I wanted to impact more women outside of just a gym setting, and I couldn't really impact women as much as I wanted to just being in like a traditional setting. I needed to dive deeper into functional health and functional wellness and accountability and things like that. And so I started that in 2020, had my baby in 2023. And I think there's another question what was the second part of your question?
About what it was like once you had your baby and were running.
It was difficult. I had an emergency C-section, and I remember I'm not saying this is right, but I remember being in my hospital bed, texting my team about things for the next day.
Yeah.
That they were doing. And they were like, get off your phone. I'm like, I just want to make sure everything's okay. It's
Yeah.
like,
yeah.
One, because obviously I'm always worried about my business in the back of my head, but two, I genuinely like love what I do.
Yeah.
So it's just always this push and pull, because like we were talking about a little earlier before we got on, it's like, it's one thing to love your baby and also be present, but another when you love your other baby in your business and you want, I love what I do. I love the impact I make with women. And that is very also gratifying for me.
Yeah.
Once I had the kid, something I severely underestimated was how much time breastfeeding was going to take.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I did not know. I thought, you have 2-hour break between when they feed, I can get stuff done. And everyone's like, your baby's going to sleep a lot, so it's actually really easy at the beginning. Lies. Like, my baby did not sleep. I thought he was colic. He screamed and cried, and I didn't realize it's an 1.5-hour break or like time for breastfeeding from the start of
Yeah.
mind-blowing.
Well, I love that you said that you like to plan as much as you can with kids, because I feel that like I was in the same boat of like I wanted to get my business established and I thought I'd have one kid and then I could still keep working and then eventually have more kids, and then I had twins and it was like, oh, okay, forget that. And then same with like when I was going into the operating room, mine was also an emergency C-section. I mean, it wasn't emergent, but I like went into labor early with the twins, and I was on the phone with an agent. Like as they were wheeling me in the operating, they're like, you have to leave your phone here. Like this is a sterile area. I was like, I'm sorry, I need to finish this call. Like I need to make sure my clients are care of. And like, for me, that was the biggest learning curve from my first pregnancy to my second, was like thinking I was prepared for maternity leave, quote unquote, as a business owner, maternity leave, to actually like having things in place where I could take a step back and say, I trust the systems and they're ready and I can actually leave. Because that first time with my twins, I was negotiating a deal 4 days after I had them, like pumping, holding a baby, and like negotiating a deal. And like the second time, I had a much better idea of what it actually would take for me.
Yes, I love that, because you can only prepare so much unless you don't know what to expect, and you think you can go back to what you were able to do, but in maybe a little bit lesser capacity. But you totally don't take into account the exhaustion.
Yeah.
I mean, I was riding 2-3 hours of sleep a night for 4 months, really. And you just aren't in a flow. And, as much as you want to believe you're fine because you have to
Mhm.
keep going, your body's not.
Ah.
And, I'm obviously in the health and fitness realm. So I am very grateful. I recovered great. I had a great postpartum.
Mhm.
Still, when you're only riding so much sleep, um, it takes, and that's one thing now, that actually I would love to share this because, my therapist called me out on this. I think everybody needs to be in therapy. I don't care if
Yeah.
you think you're fine. I think it is so important to have somebody else be able to call you out and just be able to see some blind spots that you have. I know I have a therapist and a mindset coach.
Yep.
They're different.
Same.
Um,
Yep.
and that was one thing I prioritized this year is investing in those. But she goes, we were talking about postpartum experience. She goes, what about that is wellness? That's what you stand for. And I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh.
Yeah, that's huge. And we like disassociate that. And like you said, we think we're fine. We tell ourselves that we're fine because we have to be on some level, right? We tell ourselves, oh, we're doing great. Like you have to believe that. But like you said before the call, like you're just getting yourself back 8 months later to feel like yourself again. And you forget, like, I mean, I'm 3 months postpartum right now. And although I'm fine, right? Like I can look back after my first pregnancy and see where I thought I was myself again, and then actually say, okay, no, I wasn't. And in that same space right now, like I feel good, I feel fine, but I know that in a year from now, if I'm not pregnant again, I, will be definitely a different person because there's an energy and something that is lacking that just it takes time to come back and that's normal and we need to normalize that instead of like
One thing that, and I'm going to also give this up to my mindset coach, is like, I kept saying, I'm giving myself grace because naturally in my business relies very heavily on me being there and taking
mhm,
one-on-one calls.
yeah,
And as much as I do love doing that, I didn't have any predictability with a baby, right? Until I
yeah,
got my nanny at about 3 months and I knew like he could take a bottle. I
yeah,
had no predictability on getting on one-on-one calls. And one thing that's big on for me right now is like automating a little bit more things in my business so that I know going into my second pregnancy, I'm better set
yeah,
for everybody, my team, my client, everything will be better set.
yeah,
But I kept saying, I'm giving myself grace, because I naturally in business slowed down a little bit, right? Like
mhm,
that's going to happen. And I knew that would happen. I
yep,
expected that, but I really wasn't accepting it. And he goes, you keep saying grace, but you're not giving yourself acceptance on where you are. And that hit me like a
yeah,
ton of bricks.
yeah. That's
It's like,
hitting me really hard right now, like personally,
right?
just here.
Honestly, it was like that one thing I've shared with so many people. And if nothing else, this investment, I feel like for that one sentence. So people, I think, don't realize investing in themselves in any capacity, whether it's, in a functional health space, whether it's in a mindset, whatever it might be, is like sometimes you don't need to hit everything every single week to get something. If you can get 2 good nuggets, even in
Mhm,
6 months, it is worth everything because it changes everything for you.
yes,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
definitely.
So yeah, that one really funny.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I was on a call this morning with my coach actually, and we were having a conversation about how we add value and just how my business has shifted and changed and I felt like I was lacking credibility. And it's like she's like, "No, like you just had 3 children. Like literally, you just had 3 children over the last 16 like in the course of 16 months I had 3 kids and I still ran a business and started a new business and it's like in my mind I'm like okay I'm failing because of what used to be right like I'm not hitting the same metrics that I once hit but it's like when you look at the big picture if you just instead of focusing on one metric and you look
Mhm.
at all the different things you're doing like keeping a human alive right that needs to count for something like that goes towards your credibility as a business owner truly like I would pick working with a mom over anyone else because I know they're going to handle it. I know that they can do so much because just naturally we do it without even giving ourselves credit.
Yes. I feel like people listening to this podcast would relate with feeling like a failure in some
Mm,
aspect.
yeah.
And right, you can talk about identity shifts all day long. I'm sure you talk a lot about that on people on the podcast, but it's like something that I feel like is kind of unique, more so almost to an entrepreneur. Not saying moms who are not,
Yeah.
feel this, but it's like this feeling like you're constantly failing because you're not doing everything 100%.
Mhm.
And
That's
it's like,
exactly.
what is failure? Like, what
Yeah.
truly does failure mean? And like, I
Yeah.
think like sitting with that thought And like, what does it mean to actually fail? And are you actually scared of failing? Is that what is scaring you, or is it something else?
Yeah.
And it's really something else. And we're masking it by just saying this broad failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's huge because I think so often we think about like what's our goal? What would it look like to hit our goal? But then I think if we were to reverse that, right, and say like almost so when I am pitching a speaking gig, right, I have three numbers in mind, which is like my bottom dollar, I'm not going to do it for less than that, my ideal, and then like my target. Like this is what I want, right? And it's like we need to look at our lives and our goals in that too, instead of just saying it's black and white. I'm either hitting my goals above and beyond, or if I didn't hit that goal and then some, I'm failing. It's like, no, like, why don't we give ourselves a sliding scale and say, hey, I'm doing a lot right now. If I do this, I'm going to feel good about it. If I can, of course, hit the top goal, that's great. But sometimes we need almost, I think, a buffer of like measuring success instead of it being pass or fail of I'm doing a damn good job. I'm working as hard as I can. And it's okay that I can't have 100% success.
I relay this a little bit to like what I do, because I use this with clients' habits all the time, where it's like if we're gonna hit our nutrition, or if they're tracking macros, or if they're working out, whatever that might look like, it's not I'm going to drink 100 ounces of water every day. I'm going to work out 5 days a week. I'm going to get a 30-minute walk every day. It's like,
Yeah.
let's not do that. It's like, okay, I'm going to get a 15 to 30-minute walk 5 to 6 days a week.
Yeah.
I'm going to work out 3 to 5 days a week for 20 to 30, like just that range, especially for a lot of type A perfectionist people, which is a lot of people I work with. Hello,
a lot of people listening to this as well.
Yeah. It's like, wow, just that small shift makes you feel like you're not failing all the time, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like you can hit the bottom. It's like, okay, but you did what, like, it's gosh, it's this girl actually is out of Michigan, but she wrote something about the theory of never enoughness, I think it was what it's called.
Oh,
and
I've
it's like,
heard of that.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
And it's like how nothing ever feels like enough.
Yeah.
And it's like never feel, and it's we're constantly chasing that. But anyways, yeah, just simply shifting like the goals, whether it's in business, whether it's with your health, because like for me, when working with entrepreneurs, it's like, and moms, it's like, if you do not do the basics for your health, your kids suffer, your business, everything suffers.
Yes.
And you're not a martyr here. Like, and you suffer. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like taking care of that has to be like, I hate to say number one, because you always want to put your kids number one, but it's like something happens to you, you can't show up for your kids.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just traveling, and they have to go down the aisle, and every single person with a kid, they have to look like you have to verbally accept that you will put your air mask on first and then put it on your kids. Every single flight, they go down, everyone in the aisle, they say it to everybody, but I never realized they make you like look at them in the eye and say yes, because it's something that we all hear, but how many of us are actually doing that, right? Like if the plane's going down, I think our instinct is to save everyone else around us, but we're not going to make it, right? Like we need to put our own air mask on first, and then we can serve the people around us 10 times better than if we're running out of oxygen and the plane's going down 100 miles an hour, you know? So I think that's so huge in our life that we overlook, because we think, like you said, we're trying to be a martyr and doesn't serve anybody.
Yep. And I've seen it a lot in entrepreneurial world in the last years, especially because my business is all online. So I see, you know, I'm in these other mentorships. I'm seeing people that have shifted and changed throughout the years. And I'm seeing a huge amount of people quit their business. And there's been a stark difference in the last year. And you could blame it on a few things. I mean, things are harder than they were in 2020, especially in my space, you know, when everybody was strategies change, algorithms change, you know, everything's changing, and it is different. And why I mention that is because if you don't work on yourself on a deeper level, on the mindset, on your nervous system regulation, you will burn out. And so if you're like, I want to do this because I love my clients, and you know, doing this business helps my kids and whatever, but it's like, but guess what? If you burn out and you bring the whole thing to the ground, then it's like, you know, and I'm seeing that a lot. It's just people just got burnt out and burnt everything to the ground. And it's like, would have shifted a little bit and really prioritized this. I don't know about you, but it's the hardest thing for me to work on mindset and structure. And I can do the nutrition, I can do the workouts, I can do the work all day long, but to sit in my feelings, and journal and do the breath work
Yeah.
and do the mindset work is way harder.
Yeah. Well, and I want to touch on that because that's something that I feel just in this like postpartum season that I'm in, which it feels like the postpartum season, like it feels so weird to say like, oh, I'm in it and I'm 3 months. But for me, I've noticed the hardest postpartum season is like the 3 to 6 month mark. Like 1 to 3, I'm fine. And then 3 to 6 is when I like hit the wall because I'm just like, giving, it's fine. And then at 3 months, I'm like, I am just tapped. So I feel like right now I'm in the thick of it personally. And something that I've struggled with is prioritizing myself and prioritization in general. Like for my business, I feel like when I'm not prioritizing the things that I need to do, that's when I find myself spiraling because I feel like I have no control on my time.
Wow.
So talk to me about what you've done being, 8 months into the motherhood space, what that's looked like to prioritize your mental well-being, but also the things that keep your business running. And
Well, I'll say things here. One, when people say prioritizing their health, that's such a broad spectrum. And people think, especially in our world, where they're a little bit more, again, gung ho, all or nothing mindset people, it's like prioritizing means for them, I have to work out 4 days a week. I have to hit my nutrition. I have to do all these things. And it's like, what if it wasn't? What if prioritizing yourself was just making sure you did one thing? 100
Yeah.
ounces of water. And
Yeah.
if you tell yourself, if I just do that today, I am one.
I'm going to
And
drink
what
my
if it
water
was
right
like,
now.
yeah, I got my,
As you say it, I'm like, I am not drinking enough water today.
yes. That's like, make sure there's some electrolytes in there too. If not, that's your tip for today.
Okay. Yes. I need to add my electrolytes. I'm not. Good tips. Okay.
Postpartum, dude, like electrolyte depletion is so huge, especially if you're breastfeeding.
Yeah.
But you also said something like 3 to 6 months is the hardest. It's because usually those first 1 to 3, particularly up to 6, you're running on adrenaline. So it feels, especially if you're stressed out individual, it actually feels good because your body's used to stress.
Yep.
And so like that also hit me a ton where it's like I kept feeling like so stressed and I couldn't get myself out of it. And it's like, it's because my body feels safe there. I'm so
Yeah. Wow.
So like, right.
Yeah.
Mic drop on that one.
Seriously.
But I think reframing what prioritizing yourself means, because people don't actually understand. It's like, oh, I'm prioritizing yourself. Okay, but how? What does that mean? Like, what does that even mean to you? For most of my clients who are like breastfeeding, postpartum, whatever, it's like, can you just put protein bars around your house so you can at least prioritize eating something, or like a bag of nuts? Like I have snacks and water in like every room. And it's like, for me, especially those first few weeks where I was like, babe was on the tit like 24/7.
Yeah.
I was like, for me, prioritizing was just making sure I got some calories in, and they were healthy calories, and my water, like that was it. My workouts didn't matter. Like, not that they didn't matter, they weren't prioritized for me because I had to survive.
Seriously.
So like, I did want to talk a little bit on that. I think secondly, with moms, working on nervous system regulation before you have your baby, it's one of the most important things I kind of wish I prioritized. I was in absolute survival mode my whole pregnancy with my business. I was growing it, but also just like firing and hiring and doing everything myself. I mean, I think I had 5 people that I either fired or let go, and then onboarded, interviewed, set it. I mean, it was
Oh my
insane,
gosh.
all by myself in 6 months.
Yeah.
It was nuts. So I was like, I don't have time to prioritize this, which is messed up, right? It's backwards.
No, it's real. That's like that's the reality. I was in the same thing too of hiring people because I was like rushing to have them onboarded.
I think it gets often overlooked because it's not that you're not going to be stressed. And this is what I love to tell clients when I tell them like, okay, let's work on some nervous system stuff. They're like, well, my life's so stressful, it's not going to work. It's like, it's not that you're not going to ever be stressed. It's can you get your body to have less impact from the stress?
That's so good.
Right. And it's like, when you work on nervous system stuff, it just allows your body to come a little bit more back to neutral, right? Instead of living up here all the time. And you're able to handle the stresses better postpartum, because you're going to have stresses postpartum, and it's going to be stressful and it's going to be anxious. And it's just like, I think it's ignorant to say like, it's not. It's just, can I allow myself to be less impacted, not only on an emotional level, but on a physiological level as well, because stress plays a huge role in hormones and thyroid and gut and all of that stuff. And so it's like, that's the biggest thing I see with so many clients postpartum can't lose weight.
Yeah.
It's cortisol dysregulation. And
Yeah.
it's not just like, oh, 1 week where I'm dysregulated or 1 month. It's months and months and months and months that just accumulate to where cortisol is not only high at that point, it's actually low because it's tanked out. And suddenly our body can't actually produce cortisol anymore. And we suddenly have low cortisol issues, which is
Wow.
fascinating to actually hear about.
Yeah.
Like, people never that it can go low. They only think it can be high.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so, then it takes a while to get your body back to homeostasis, for lack of better words,
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about like what work, if there's someone listening who is pregnant or, postpartum and wants to do that nervous system work, what do you recommend? Where can someone start? If they're not, they have.
Yeah. I think one thing is to find what feels good for you, because nervous system work's kind of broad, right? You can tap into, you can literally do tapping. It's called EFT tapping. Like, you can download an app and do that. You can download Calm. It's a great meditative app where you do 5 or 10 minutes of meditation. But not everybody likes meditation. Not everybody likes tapping. I love journaling. Not everybody likes journaling. Breath work is so powerful.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a while to get into that. So I think you have to try different things and feel what kind of sticks for the time being. So
Yeah.
where I typically start is learning breath work, and box breathing is my favorite because you can do it anywhere.
Okay.
And it's so simple. It's you inhale through the nose for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts, you exhale through your mouth for 4 counts, and you hold for 4 counts. So it's like a box.
Okay.
And that's great because it just shifts your body from the sympathetic, fight or flight, to this parasympathetic rest and digest state
Yeah.
immediately. And just, something that's simple, free, takes 5 seconds, right? You can do it in a meeting. You can do it when your kid's yelling. You don't have to go be like, oh, I have to go journal out, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. That's usually like just getting used to that. Calm app, as I mentioned, doing a 5-minute meditation and getting comfortable with that, because for me, sitting in stillness and meditating is not easy. It does not come easily. And I think people give up on it. Right?
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
And the more you can be uncomfortable, the more you can break through that, and the more breakthroughs you're going to have. But you have to get used to feeling uncomfortable first.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true and so huge. I mean, it's in anything we do, right? That uncomfortable space is normally where growth happens, but to get there just takes, it's just like breaking patterns you're used to. I was on a call yesterday, and the coach that was leading it was talking about, like, if you put your hands together, like if you interlock your fingers and put your hands together and you do it 5 times, how you put the same thumb over on top always naturally. It's just something you're going to do. And then he said, like, put it the other way. And how does it feel? It feels weird. It feels awkward. So think about, like, that's just such a little small thing. And to get out of what we're used to, how weird that feels. And then you think about doing it on a larger scale of within our business, within our marriage, in our parenting habits. It's just going to take work, and it's not going to feel natural, even if you're doing it right the first.
How many people listening to this are doing this right now? They're like,
yeah, I know, seriously. So it's a fun fact. He said, if your left thumb is on top, have you heard this? Do you know what I'm going to say? You're more creative and also, like, better in bed. And then if your right thumb is on top, you're more likely to be logical dollars or something.
I was just at a conference, and the woman was talking about this, and the parts of the brain. I was like, that's funny.
Yeah, I thought that was such a fun fact, so I'm sharing it because I thought maybe someone will get a kick out of it. But then I was like questioning, which thumb did I really put first? Am I right?
I did the same thing.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, well, talk to me too. So you mentioned hiring and firing, and that is just its own beast. I know, like, management is hard, and running a business is pressure enough, but then when you're responsible for other people's income and livelihood, it can be so stressful. So talk to me about what it's been like to onboard people, how it's been managing them, and how you've navigated that well.
Woof. I will say the biggest mistake I made, and looking back, I still don't think I would change a thing because I don't feel like I could have, but going forward with any additional pregnancies, I will take more time off. That was one thing. I got back in 2 weeks full time, but I never even really took those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I just got back into like some client facing stuff in 2 weeks. It was really early and very stressful. And luckily I work from my phone, so I could like breastfeed and do stuff on my
Yeah.
phone. So that's cool. I really, really, again, the planner in me, like, I knew when we wanted to start trying. I work a lot in hormones, not saying that matters, but like I had a feeling I would get pregnant pretty quickly. I got pregnant on the first try. So like why I mentioned that is I had a timeline where I wanted a pretty solid team leading up to when I got pregnant. So I did hiring to try to find the right people. Now, as I was pregnant, I was realizing certain things were shifting in my business, and some of the people were not in alignment with the vision that I saw the future of my company.
That's so hard.
I held on to it for a while because I was like, oh no, I just have to get through this pregnancy. I have to get through this postpartum. And then I realized that more out of alignment I felt, the more resistance I was in my business. So it was this double-edged sword. So I know I had to get rid of them, but I was like, oh my God, I have to find these people, find the right fits is always very difficult, especially in my profession. Well, in any profession, but I have a little bit more niche market. I needed to find the right fits, and it was hard because I spent months finding the right people, interviewing, hiring. And the biggest thing I wish I would have taken more seriously is when I first hired, it was finding an alignment on the future of my business, not just in need of hiring somebody right?
Same thing. Yeah.
And I think everybody, if you've done that, you realize how much it's actually cost you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I hate firing. I don't know about you, but like I hate firing. So it's like, okay, would I rather just keep them on and lose money? Do I fight? Like it's so hard to do that. That was the biggest lesson that I learned the second time around with my pregnancy, was like being so intentional. I interviewed like 14 people to hire 2, and like they were intense. Like I made people do like personality tests and like quizzes, and I paid them to do work ahead of time. That was something that if people listening have never done that and you're hiring, ask them to do a task or 3. Like I had them do 3 tasks before. I sent them 3 tasks, and one of my top applicants emailed back and was like, good luck finding someone who's going to do that. And like I was willing, like I said, I'll pay you more than like your hourly for your time to do these tasks. She's like, good luck having someone do that in a week, and like blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I'm glad I did that. Imagine if I would have hired her and then that came out later. So yeah, it's to do, in my opinion.
Slow to hire, quick to fire. Like that's really like
easier said than done though.
Especially being a woman. It's, I don't know if you've gone through this at all, but like many times when you're in this entrepreneurial world, a lot of people are much more in their masculine and they're in their masculine energy. And then you become a mom and you're in this feminine energy. And then suddenly your identity has to shift, not only become mom, but also with almost a subconscious reprogramming on you can't always be more masculine and deal with the problems that that are very feminine, right? That's not only like talking about like womanhood, but just in the way that we nurture and the way that we like address problems. And I think that's something that kind of gets overlooked. Is like firing is very difficult because it's like, it's important, but it's like it takes us away a little bit from our feminine and much more masculine. You know what I mean? So it's I think that's just difficult for women to do in general. Because we're very like, oh, how are they gonna feel? I want to make sure they're taken care of. But ultimately too, you have to care about yourself too, because like if they're not a good fit, it's not a good fit for your business or them long term, right? It's bringing them
Yeah, that's huge. That's so good. I'm so glad you said that, because I think it's easy to forget that, to forget that it is like taking away from our business, right, by keeping them on. Because I don't know about for you, but for me, it was like an energy suck. Like I would think about it like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But I also harbored resentment. Like, oh my gosh, I'm paying them this amount of money to sit here. It was like, oh my gosh, so frustrating. So yeah, I love.
It's I think too, when this is in life in general, but particularly with like a team member, but it's like once you start harboring that resentment, you start almost like looking for things they're doing wrong.
100%.
And they can't do anything right.
It's not a good cycle. In any relationship though, like you said, I mean, I feel that in my marriage too. Like if there's something that like is not addressed, and I like find myself like looking for things, right? Because I know I'm like, oh, I should have addressed the first thing and it would have been fine and over with. But by me trying to quote unquote ignore it, it just
Yeah.
makes like everything this heightened situation. So, yeah, that's such good. I think that's something that like we should all audit ourselves on more often. Like, where are you harboring resentment in your life? Like, you don't need to feel shame for it, but like work through it so that it's not keeping you back because it's probably hurting you a lot.
Oh gosh, could like literally, yeah, it's like that saying, it's like, harboring resentment or grudge is like drinking poison and hoping the other person feels
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Like, but I think I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole too much with this, but a lot of this too is working back on yourself and working on your nervous system, because when you do that, you might realize that there's some inner child healing that you need to work on.
It's huge.
And that's showing up in the way that you hold a team, or, lead a team, and, or just your dysregulation could be the reason, like, you're not finding the right people, or the right people aren't staying, or, you know what I mean? A lot of it comes down to you. And I know for
Yeah.
me, I invested heavily this year into working more on that for myself, because it's going to inadvertently help my business and also help me impact more women, which is my ultimate goal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's huge. I think mindset and personal development, personal growth is something that if you look at like successful business owners on like a large scale, right? All of those people who have been in business, have been growing business, are doing, hitting goals, doing what they want to do. All of them are factoring those expenses, the mindset coaching, the business, like the personal development side, that is a business expense, right? Like me seeing a therapist, me seeing a coach, that is something I'm factoring into my business expense, but it's not something that's on your, like if you go in and Google or chat GPT, what are my startup costs for a business? Nobody's talking about, hey, actually you need to like spend all this money on therapy and you need to hire a coach right away. But like really it should be, because that is so huge in how you grow your business. And we're not talking about it enough. It's not normalized enough yet. I think we're getting there, but it's like, that is a business expense that is necessary to be successful. I stand by that 100%. And I think if people are being successful and they're not working on those things, it's going to catch up one way or another, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life. But I don't think you can quote unquote juggle it all.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that. I think the hard part is you have to be ready to do it. And you have to be open and willing.
Yeah.
Because I will say, up until probably last year, I don't think I would have been. I preach it to my clients, and I'll do small stuff here and there, but it wasn't until stuff just kept bubbling up in my life subconsciously that I was like, I really need to actually take this seriously.
Yeah.
And invest it. For me, I invest very heavily into myself.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not going to do it myself, and
Yeah,
I
definitely.
need somebody to call out my blind spots, and I need somebody to be there with me. And so, but I had to be open and willing to do that. I remember trying even therapy in 2020, thinking I was ready for it, did it. Granted, I didn't like the therapist. We were definitely not a vibe. Like the jive is not there. I was like, then it was my excuse. I didn't like her. So then I went back to therapy because I was like, well, that didn't work. I tried.
Yeah. I think that's common. It's hard to find a good therapist too. And it's like so exhausting emotionally to like start fresh and
Oh my gosh. But I think one thing is to remind yourself, like, if you do that, I didn't realize this until much later when I was working on this. It was like, wow, that was my excuse to get out of it, because I wasn't ready. It wasn't necessarily her fault, because I could have done so many other things and found way more other resources. I just didn't, because I was like, I have too many other things to work on, and that 1 hour is way more important to do my business stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It feels that way for sure. It feels like you're taking away from your business. This is a conversation that I had with my husband recently because, both running businesses, right? We are in the business space a lot. And I've been in therapy for forever. And I think it's harder for guys to like normalize that. But without going too deep down that rabbit hole, I like parenting book and I wanted us to read it together. It was, something I read and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I think you should read it too. So we're on the same page. And my husband reads so many books, like business books, like before bed, he's in bed reading. That is not me. Like that is his thing. Like, I'm like, I need to watch TV. I've had a long day, but whatever. So he's reading his books and he's probably read 20 plus business. And where's the parenting book? Nowhere. Like he won't read it. And I'm like, babe, this is like our most important job, like as in our life, like it's going to cost us the most money, but it's the most important job that we have. So like to prioritize and not treat it like it's taking away from our business, like same with our mental health. Like that's not if we think about it as like, oh, I'm going to therapy, that's taking away from my business, of course we're not going to do it. But if you can shift your mindset and say, okay, me going to therapy is actually going to help me be a better business owner, be a better spouse, be a better parent. It's like, think about how you would treat.
Mic drop. Love it. Love it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Shannon,
yeah.
this has been like such a fun conversation. I feel like we could talk for literally 5 hours, but I want people to know where they can connect with you and what you offer. So talk to me about like what.
Yeah. So you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at shannon.salge. My Instagram business page is the Wellness Paradigm page. I have a really great Facebook community with a lot of free trainings in there. I pour into that community so much. So if you're looking to just get your feet wet, maybe in the health and wellness space, reach out to me. I'll send you the link for my Facebook group. It's like the Women's Holistic Health Fitness Community on Facebook. But pretty much we offer, functional holistic health fitness coaching for women, focusing on addressing their mind, their body, their spirit, from a whole body approach, nutrition, fitness, but also nervous system regulation, functional lab testing. We do a lot of that too, to get to the root cause of a lot of clients' issues. We do it in a one-on-one container, which is my passion too, because I love helping people in that one-on-one space.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is so great. We'll link that Facebook group in the show notes, will we? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll put that Facebook group in the show notes as well, and we'll have people connect with you. All your social links will be there. So thank you so much. This conversation, I think, has been just so important to shed a light on all the things that as women in postpartum and just, all the things that we face as moms and business owners that can feel so isolating. It's hard to bring up to your friends like, hey, I'm struggling with my nervous system regulation, or, that like 3 to 6 month postpartum, like, oh yeah, my baby's 3 months old and I'm just starting to like feel like I'm struggling now. Like those so hard to bring up sometimes. So I love that we were able to like talk about it and bring it up. And hopefully this is just a conversation starter for women listening to feel confident to address it and normalize what they're experiencing. Because as you know, we're all going through it, and there's so much that overlaps that we just don't talk about, but it is so normal. So thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Mom Boss Central. I hope you found inspiration, encouragement, and maybe even a few new strategies to rock your mom boss journey. Remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. And don't forget to share the love with your fellow mom bosses. Make sure to join the community at mombosscentral.com. It's completely free and a space to connect with like-minded women. All you have to do is sign up and start connecting. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and living authentically. We're so happy to have you as part of the Mom Boss Central community.